we'll start off. Hi, hello, and welcome to the first episode of Join series, where we'll be interacting with a host of industry speakers. I'm John Vincent, co-founder of nicheBrains and the host for this series. Just a quick brief about nicheBrains. nicheBrains is a business transformation platform which connects millions of SMEs with the best of brains across the globe to adopt digital transformation, to help them grow their business exponentially, thus democratizing digital transformation. In today's session, we have a wonderful guest, Mr. Shekar Rangarajan, a veteran with general managerial exposure of 48 years. He's a business process architect, consultant, coach, and a mentor. He's also author to wonderful books, Business 2020, which was released in 2014. Then there's Glow, Play for Greatness, which was released this year. The book is available on Amazon and Kindle, and I would highly recommend you to grab a copy and read it. So welcome to today's episode, Mr. Shekar. Great to have you interact with us today. It'll be great if you can start off by giving a brief introduction about yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here. And what I would actually like to begin by saying is I'm known as a thought catalyst. And what I mean by thought catalyst is I promote counterintuitive thinking. By my expertise, I consider myself to be a business process architect. And process architect meaning that most of the organizations have a business architecture. And I try and look at the business from the process point of view. And that is going to be the main theme of today's topic. By way of experience, I have had a broad general managerial exposure. I began life as a salesman. For about 12 years, I was a salesman and then became a product manager. From product manager, I became a general manager. As a general manager, I initiated large-scale transformation for companies like Xerox, G Capital, and Citibank. And then I went on to IT and spent about 5 to 6 years, 1 year in the US as a country head and 5 years in India, essentially looking at the strategy and technology. And one of the things that I did was banking convergence for Citibank, that of course went on to become Easter for TCS. And in terms of expertise, I believe that I practice systems thinking. Systems thinking is end-to-end holistic thinking that enables enterprise convergence, helps maximize return on assets, and of course, value chain migration. We move the value chain. And the subject I love most is to be counterintuitive in my thinking. What I mean by counterintuitive thinking is what is common sense today becomes common nonsense because of technology obsolescence. And by being a counterintuitive thinker, we can convert our weaknesses into strengths, our experience into expertise, and crisis into an opportunity. So you would say, okay, what are the hallmarks of a counterintuitive thinker? Well, I believe in terms of, there are feature advantages and benefits. The feature of a counterintuitive thinker is that they are future-focused, self-funded, real-time wealth builders and value accelerators. That is a feature. I'm sure many of you would be here counterintuitive thinkers. The advantage, of course, is that we are market sensitive, talent savvy in the sense we try and shrink wrap whatever we know so that it becomes some kind of an expert system. And therefore, we are agile thinkers. Benefit is, I believe we should be able to run a business without going to the bank. And that would mean be real-time, cash-rich, debt-free, and asset-light. I'll talk a little more about it. So at the end of the day, counterintuitive thinking helps unlock business value through digital convergence for growth. And I would rest my case and go on to whatever that John may have in store for you. John, over to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great to hear from you, Mr. Shekar. So, Mr. Shekar, starting on this topic for today, see, the ability of the big and the agility of the small. It's a pretty interesting statement. And in your message, you had also mentioned about the tale of two companies. Can you explain more on that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, a tale of two cities is what you might, many of you recall when I say tale of two companies. Well, when I started my career in 1970s, I found that many of my colleagues who studied in my business school, went on to join an Indian startup, and that was in paint industry. To my knowledge, I felt that probably they were making a career mistake, because they would have been much safer had they stayed on with an MNC. And those days, the paint industry were monopolized by brand leaders like Jensen Nicholson, Berger Paints, and things like that. Whereas this startup company was unknown. They were market dominant, whereas this was a newbie.
Yeah.
They had an exclusive channel of distribution, whereas this new company had no market access. They were a professionally managed company, whereas this was a one-man show, somebody who is not even an MBA, and I thought MBAs were great. And these were professionally managed people. This was owner-promoter managed. They were public limited blue chip company with a lot of deep pockets, whereas this is a self-funded bootstrapping company. And by 2020, 60 years later, and this is what fascinated me most, I found that the MNCs trace a red curve, in the sense, like any classical company, they had a birth, maturity, and then decline. Whereas this company went skyrocketing and continues to go up even today. You might be surprised to know that that blue company in blue is nothing but Asian Paints. So this is a classic distinction between multinational established in India, whereas a new company that comes into the new fold. So what color of business do you want to have sometime hence, red or blue?
Definitely blue anytime. Any business would love to be in the blue only.
Thank you. So automatically what stands to question is, how did they make the difference? And the difference, therefore, is very interesting. MNCs versus the Asian Paints. The MNCs used to offer a limited variety, whereas these people offered close to 5,000 stock keeping units. Paint comes today in nearly 600 plus shades and 9 sizes, from 50 liters to, I think, as little as 50 ml. So that is a variety they were handling. The inventory turns, they managed to turn that inventory 12 times a year or once a month. These people were turning over their inventory 4 times a day. To illustrate as an example, if you are a paint store anywhere in India, you get supplies 4 times a day and you sell them 4 times a day. So in other words, at the end of the day, you might be stuck out and you carry no inventory for the following day.
Yeah.
And so, well, this is 12 per year. This was almost 1,500 plus times.
Right.
In terms of channel, they had 4 tiers, the MNCs, the manufacturer, wholesale distributors, retail points, and then of course point of sale, whereas they direct supply from company to the retail point. As a consequence, their supply chain appeared choked, slow, and in batches, whereas the startup company was free-flowing, real-time, and not in batches, but continuous. The MNC company used a partial fulfillment, stockouts, and dead stocks, whereas this company had 100% fulfillment, daily zero stockout, and daily zero dead stocks. And that is hell of a feat. And the trade margins, they used to pay 10%, whereas according to 3%. Market share is 23% versus 50%. Now, you might be wondering, where am I quoting all this from? This is from a research published by a company called Marcellus. And if you're interested, okay, you can look at their prospectus. The retail points during COVID period went from 80,000 to 1,20,000, and they continue to be a price leader.
Yeah.
The question is, how many of us want to differentiate and get ahead? Or do we want to play by the rules of the game that are defined by the market, the MNCs?
Definitely, everybody would want to do that. They would like to, differentiate and move ahead.
Fine, sir. So then, in which case, my proposition is, there may be so many ways to differentiate, but one way to differentiate that I believe is something that is worth your money on, is what I call looking at the way we digitize our business processes. Now, typically when we talk about business processes, we only talk about the cash coming in or in. We put money into the business, we take money out of the business,
Right.
or we get money into the business. So inputs, we create outputs, and we put in, we outgo cash and we get in cash. The interesting thing is, I look at business 6 layers deep. There is, of course, a superficial layer where there is workflow. Like if you're a paint company, you will get some chemicals and it goes out as finished products. But beneath that is a domain know-how like every business would have on the art of making paint.
Right.
Below that would be the data flow. Below that would be the decision flow. Below that would be the value flow. And below that is the cash flow. So if we want to succeed in business, like Asian Paints, we need to look at business not only in the top layer, but we need to be looking at all the 6 layers.
Right.
Second is we need to look at all the 6 layers, collect data not on a batch mode, but on a continuous mode, real time. The third one is to be able to manage this, all the 6 flows concurrently and not in a distributed fashion. So in other words, we need to take a system integrated approach to managing the system itself, not just the MIS department. By doing that, what happens is we reduce the gap between demand and supply, and ultimately business is all about matching the supplies and demand. So the advantage that digital convergence does is, on the one hand, you have a fast forward mode where you say supply side decision making. At the same time, you have action replay mode wherein you are market responsive and you correct your margin of error, or keep a backup for safety and things like that. So keep constantly making sure that you're tuned in and timed into whatever are the vagaries in the marketplace. And that I don't think is at all possible unless there are 2 fundamental conditions that we fulfill. One is that the business control system operates like the cockpit controls. You can't fly an aircraft unless we sit on the cockpit. And second thing is the captain must assume charge and be in the cockpit. Cannot be an absentee landlord. Right. So my submission is, can we enable digital convergence to stay tuned into the business and manage the business dynamics? There are many experts in the audience, John, so there might be a lot of questions, and I'll be happy to take them on. And please do share your own viewpoint as well.
So Mr. Shekar, so in today's business, pretty much most of the businesses are like in a traditional way. They're on autopilot way of execution, right? They're not ready to make the change. They seem to be okay with the flow, but now the challenge has been creeping up in terms of the cost and profit margins there as well are shrinking. So also most of the companies do not capture enough data. And also, even if they capture the data, there's a lot of insights, there's lack of insights on the gaps, and there's holes actually in the current business model itself. They're not able to figure it out. So what would be your thought process on that?
I think this is a tough question because it's very easy for me to sit here and talk, but invariably the enlightened managers do understand the futility of firefighting. Firefighting is a consequence of actually the business playing up on a catch-up mode. So therefore, they do appreciate the fact that they need to step back and do 3 things fundamentally. One is recognize that there is a right to information. RTI is the fundamental right of everybody in the company. And information, when we say, is meaning that it should mean the same thing to everybody. So all of us should have a common data dictionary. For example, if on time means on what time, by whose watch. So therefore, we need to have a way of making sure that there is one central agency that sinks in, maybe the chief information officer's office, or I don't know, data center. But we need to say, look, information should be up to date, up to the last maybe second, or maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So that is one right to information. Second thing is, I believe we need to have complete transparency. Right. Because without transparency, there is no traceability. And without traceability, we always have problem happening in one place, but we are actually shooting at some other place. And if we have transparency, then we don't have to shoot in the dark. We know we are exactly focused on where the problem. Third and most important thing is trust. Now, if there is timeliness of information which is accurate, and there is transparency of information, it builds trust. And when we have all the three, and all these three are intangibles, they don't pay money. But this is where I think the enlightened managers make a difference. They understand that they are in the business of sweating intangible assets to create tangible profits.
Yep.
And I think this is a huge leap of faith, and that's why I may often call it counterintuitive. Because we are so much focused on the hardware in the business, we very rarely focus on the software side of the business. And my submission to many of the enlightened captains is, however counterintuitive it may be sounding, kindly give it a try. Kindly allow one pilot and try and see what it means to be able to have information available to everybody on time, decision taking that is real time, and we are able to progressively reduce the margin of error and increasing the factor of safety of the business. This, in essence, is what I believe is inevitable. I don't think we have a choice in the matter, but I'm open to contrarian views, and I'll be very happy to entertain them.
Right. So do you have any parting thoughts for how SMEs can look at the business as such?
Well, by your parting thoughts, I actually have. I'm very happy to give away my book, and the book essentially it was published in 2014 based on my experiences about 30 companies in manufacturing and IT sector, and fundamentally the purpose of that is how to innovate, succeed, in small business, because every big business was once a small business. So then how did the small businesses get big? Whether or not they had competition, I believe there was a central, the mantra for success, according to me, is just three, and that's my parting shot. One is stay debt free. Please borrow from the bank only to the extent that you need, but don't get indebted. Pay back. Second thing is be cash rich. And third, be asset light. Because what quite often happens is, if we are not debt free, we are servicing the debt unnecessarily. Now, we are not in the business for servicing debt. We are in the business of taking money and then rotating money. Second thing is, be cash rich. What I mean, as much as possible, try and maximize your sales by cash, because credit anybody can give. And the moment we give away credit, then it takes that much longer to get back money. And third is asset light, and this is the most painful aspect. And for IT companies, it's even more painful because the real asset in companies are people. For IT companies, almost 50% of the revenue is wage and salary bills. Now, if we have people who are obsolescent and who will not learn, then regardless of whatever we do, we have a lot of people on our rolls, but who are not exactly converting their knowledge into money. So asset light here means not only I'm talking about plant and machinery, land and buildings. I'm also talking about the workforce. If we do that, I believe we can be our own bank. We don't have to run to the bank every time.
Right.
And my submission is, by beginning with digital transformation, getting everybody digitally literate, we can have a quantum leap in business. This is, in brief, is I believe my legacy that I can pass on to people who really want to grow in life.
Wonderful, Mr. Shekar. So just to summarize some key inputs that we have given Mr. Shekar. So one is, data is obviously very key for a company. And it's important that companies, build that data. Second thing, what you have talked about is, the efficient use of data and decision making and pivoting of the business if needed. And finally, companies need to, as much as possible, stay debt free, be asset light, and obviously the cash rich by being a banker for themselves. So thank you, Mr. Shekar, for sharing your insights for today.